There's one title. My new moniker for this title is Always a Bridesmaid, Never a Bride, but maybe this time. If you know what I'm talking about, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Wow, my TBR is going to be so huge. Basically, all the books for my TBR for the rest of the year are determined, at least. Hello, hi everyone, it's me, Jess. It's my pleasure to hop on today a little bit unexpectedly to make a reaction video to the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction's long list. This long list includes 15 authors from the United States and Canada, and on May 13th, one is going to win a very substantial monetary prize of $150,000 US. That's a serious prize. And so I'm just very excited. I can see already looking at it that there are quite a few Canadian titles, which just is fantastic. I can also see that there are some titles that people were predicting for the Women's Prize long list. That is very exciting. And I can see that there are some titles. There's one title. My new moniker for this title is Always a Bridesmaid, Never a Bride, but maybe this time will be different. It's very interesting. I was looking at the long list selection jury. It includes Eden Robinson, which is really, really cool. Eden Robinson is the author of Monkey Beach. I've not read it yet, but heard fantastic things about her work. So that is really exciting to me. The other jurors were Jen Sukfong Lee, who is the jury chair. Again, this is a Canadian, Vancouver's East Side is the place where she was born and raised. So that's very exciting. And I've never read anything of hers, but her most recent book is a memoir called Superfan, which I've definitely seen in bookstores. We also have Layla Lalami. Guys, Layla Lalami. That is so cool. Arab-American author, longlisted for the Booker Prize and a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction. So that is really interesting. I haven't read anything by her either. Gonna have to start reading some books by the jurors. Claire Massoud, she teaches creative writing at Harvard University, and I haven't read anything by her either, although I've heard the name. And then we have Delene Perkins Valdez, also American. She's an associate professor in the MFA program at American University in Washington, D.C., and has written several New York Times bestsellers, including Wench, Balm, and Take My Hand. Also books that I'm not familiar with. So that is very exciting. That is really impressive for this prize. That I think this is only the second year of the prize. So I'm feeling really excited about this new prize. So I'm going to go through the books one by one and just talk a little bit about them and talk about which ones I think I might be most interested in reading, which ones I've heard of, which ones I haven't heard of. I will say that I've heard of most of the books on the list, but not all of the books on the list. So it's always exciting when there's a few that you haven't heard of before. We'll do the Canadians first, okay? So I'll start with Cocktail by Lisa Allward. She is now living in Fredericton, New Brunswick, which is really in my corner of the world. And she grew up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is where I'm from. So this is very exciting to me. This, I believe, is a set of short stories. The description, I'll just read the description. A girl receives a bedtime visit from from a drunken party guest who will haunt her fantasies for years. A young mother discovers underneath the wallpaper a striking portrait that awakens inconvenient desire. A divorced man distracts himself from the mess he's made by flirting with a stranger. These intimate, immersive stories explore life's watershed moments in which seemingly insignificant details, pot of hyacinths, a freshly painted yellow wall, and the most chance of encounters come to exert a tidal pull. Set in the swinging 60s and each decade since, Cocktail reveals the schism between the lives we build up around us and our deepest hidden selves. This sounds so good. I remember feeling the same way when I saw it listed. Okay, so I heard about Cocktail because I talked about it as it was mentioned in one of those lists that I read from the Globe and Mail. That is very, very exciting. Daughter by Claudia Day. I did talk about this one because it was in a list from the Globe and Mail, and it sounds, I'm not sure if this is something that I want to read. It sounds very dark. It's about a relationship between daughter and father. Claudia Day is actually an adjunct professor at University of Toronto. She has also been a film actress and a guest artist at the National Theatre School, which is really interesting. Her essays have appeared in the Paris Review, and she was nominated for the Governor General's Award for her plays, which have been produced internationally. So that sounds really interesting. And she has another novel called Heartbreaker. So I'll just read you the description for Daughter. To be loved by your father is to be loved by God. So says Mona Dean, playwright, actress, and daughter to a man famous for one great novel, and in fruitless pursuit of the next, whose needs and insecurities exert an inescapable pull and exact an immeasurable toll on the woman of his family, Mona, her sister, her half-sister, their mothers. His infidelity destroyed Mona's childhood, setting her in opposition to a cold, cruel stepmother who, though equally damaged, disdains her for being broken. Then, just as Mona is settling into her life as an adult and fledgling artist, he begins a new affair and takes her into his confidence. Mona delights, painfully, parasitically, in his attention. Oh, it just sounds so creepy. When he inevitably confesses to his wife, Mona is cast as the agent of disruption, punished for her father's crimes and ejected from the family. Oh, it sounds very dramatic and very dark and kind of disturbing. I think I want to read it. So the next Canadian on the list, I went actually to the book launch for this book because it's a Montreal author. And this is the book that has won Canada Reads. Canada Reads wrapped up yesterday. And this book was defended by Heather O'Neill. The book I'm talking about is The Future by Catherine Leroux. I'm not sure about this one. I've said all along that I'm not very interested in this book. She is getting a lot of attention though. The book is a dystopian book, and it's translated actually from the French by Susan Uriou. I think it might be the only translated work on this list, but I'm not sure because I haven't been through everything. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. I didn't realize that that was something that I didn't look at the rules for the Carol Shields Prize, and there are some particular stipulations about that. It'd be interesting to look deeper into the rules. The Future is a dystopian novel, and it presents an alternate history of Detroit as if the French had not lost that territory. In an alternate history of Detroit, the Motor City was never surrendered to the US. Its residents deal with pollution, poverty, and the legacy of racism. Strange and magical things are happening. Children rule over their own kingdom in the trees, and burned houses regenerate themselves. See? I don't know. When Gloria arrives looking for answers and her missing granddaughters, at first she finds only the hungry mouse in the derelict home where her daughter was murdered. The neighbors take pity on her, and she turns to their resilience and impressive gardens for sustenance. I'm still feeling really unsure about whether I'm going to read this one. It just doesn't appeal to me. I can't tell you why. It just seems sort of like a strange off-the-wall book, but not in a way that jives for me. Sorry to say, I don't know what I have, but maybe it's like a great book and I'm missing something. I'm not sure. I mean, it is on this list after all. Chrysalis by Anuja Varghese, which is a set of short stories. Anuja is in Hamilton, Ontario, based in Hamilton, Ontario, and Chrysalis is described as genre blending stories of transformation and belonging that center women of color and explore queerness, family, and community. A couple in a crumbling marriage faces divine intervention. A woman dies in her dreams again and again until she finds salvation in an unexpected source. A teenage misfit discovers a darkness lurking just beyond the borders of her suburban home. The stories in Chrysalis, this debut collection, are by turns poignant and chilling, blurring the lines between the real world and worlds beyond. That sounds really good, actually. I haven't been reading a lot of short fiction, but I'm glad to see some short stories on this list. So next, I think those are all the Canadian titles. Well, we do have Burnham Wood, which the Canadians, we have claimed Eleanor Catton. We've staked a claim on Eleanor Catton. This is the one that I feel is always the bridesmaid, never the bride, because the book has been on so many different lists. I read Burnham Wood last year and loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I think it would be epic if it won the Carol Shields Award. I almost feel like it's been looked over a little bit, that it should have perhaps won the Giller, although I'm not upset that Study for Obedience won. So, you know, it's tough. The competition is tough. I think everybody knows the premise of Burnham Wood. It's about a billionaire who is using the land in sinister ways, and a guerrilla group of gardeners who he convinces to come over to the dark side, and the split in the politics of that group. Yes, I've talked about it extensively on my channel. We'll leave a link to my review of it in the description box below. I think I'll just talk about some of the books that I saw being predicted for the Women's Prize, which are actually on this list, which I always find really interesting. In terms of the predictions for the Women's Prize, I had seen, and then I'll talk about the ones that I haven't heard of. I had seen, well, or the ones that were predicted for the Women's Prize and the ones that are on the Women's Prize, the crossover. So the first one that crosses over in that regard is Brotherless Knight, because Brotherless Knight is listed on the long list for the Women's Prize and also long listed on the Carol Shields Prize. That is very exciting for this author, B.V. Ganeshanan. Hope I'm saying that correctly. This is a story set in Jaffna, 1981. 16-year-old Sashi wants to become a doctor, but over the next decade, a vicious civil war tears through her home, and her dream spins off course as she sees her 4 beloved brothers and their friend Kay swept up in the mounting violence. Desperate to act, Sashi accepts Kay's invitation to work as a medic at a field hospital for the militant Tamil Tigers, who, following years of state discrimination and violence, are fighting for a separate homeland for Sri Lanka's Tamil minority. This sounds like it's going to be really, really good. After the Tigers murder one of her teachers and Indian peacekeepers arrive only to commit further atrocities, Sashi begins to question where she stands. This sounds so good. I have it on reserve at my library and I really want to read it. It sounds fantastic. I would not have known about it if it wasn't on the Women's Prize. That is for sure. Then we have Loot by Tanya James, which a lot of people were predicting for the Women's Prize, at least for the booktubers that I watch. Tanya James, she's written a couple of other novels and she's fairly well respected. She's in Washington, D.C. Loot is about Abbas, who is just 17 years old when his gifts as a woodcarver come to the attention of Tipu Sultan, and he is drawn into service at the palace in order to build a giant tiger automaton for Tipu's sons, a gift to commemorate their return from British captivity. His fate and the fate of the wooden tiger he helps create will mirror the vicissitudes of nations and dynasties ravaged by war across India and Europe. That sounds really good too. I've heard really good things about it. I have some questions for you by Rebecca Mackay. I infamously took this book out of the library, didn't read it, returned it to the library, took it out of the library, almost picked it up at the bookstore, didn't pick it up at the bookstore, and finally I have a reason to pick it up. I remember Jennifer Love's Books talking about what a great book this was, and a lot of people were a couple of people predicted it, but I don't think it was eligible for the Women's Prize because of the date when it was published. So it's nice to see it here. This is the story of a successful film professor and podcaster, Bodie Kane, is content to forget her past, the family tragedy that marred her adolescence, her 4 largely miserable years at a New Hampshire boarding school, and the murder of her former roommate, Talia Keith, in the spring of their senior year. Though the circumstances surrounding Talia's death and the conviction of the school's athletic trainer, Omar Evans, are hotly debated online, Bodie needs to let sleeping dogs lie. Oh, that already is enough for me to be sucked in. I really want to read it, and now I will go and purchase it, and definitely gonna read it and get to it in the next couple of months. Actually, if I do more judging for the BookTube prize, maybe I will get it in a grouping for the BookTube prize, because I know it's one of the books on the BookTube prize 48, History of Burning, which a lot of people were talking about potentially being on the Women's Prize long list. So this is also set in India, 1898. Purbai is the 13-year-old breadwinner of his family when he steps into a dhow on the promise of work, only to be taken across the ocean to labor on the East African Railway for the British. With no money or voice but a strong will to survive, he makes an impossible choice that will haunt him for the rest of his days and reverberate across generations. Purbai's children go on to thrive in Uganda during the waning days of British colonial rule as the country moves towards independence and military dictatorship. His granddaughters, sisters Latika, Mayuri, and Kia, come of age in a divided nation, each following her own path for the future. Oh, so this seems to span several generations. It sounds really, really good as well. And another one that I saw predicted for the Women's Prize long list, and I'm so happy to see it here, is A Council of Dolls. I almost had this on my prediction video. It was one of the ones that I left off for the Women's Prize, but I've been wanting to read it since it came on my radar, and I know that Camilla predicted it in her Women's Prize prediction video. This, I think, crosses several different women across several different time periods. It's described as being the long-awaited, profoundly moving, and unforgettable new novel from PEN Award-winning Native American author Mona Susan Power, spanning 3 generations of Yanktonai Dakota women from the 19th century to the present day. From the mid-century metropolis of Chicago to the windswept ancestral lands of the Dakota people to the bleak and brutal Indian boarding schools. A Council of Dolls is the story of 3 women told in part through the stories of the dolls they carry. This one sounds really good. I really want to read it as well. Wow, my TBR is going to be so huge. Basically, all the books for my TBR for the rest of the year are decided. There's one more that everybody was predicting for the Women's Prize long list that is here as well, and that is The Land of Milk and Honey. I saw so many people predicting this for the Women's Prize long list. And here it is on the Carol Shields Prize long list. This is, I think, a dystopian novel by C. Pam Zhang. It's about a chef. Yes, a smog has spread. Food crops are rapidly disappearing. A chef escapes her dying career in a dreary city to take a job at a decadent mountaintop colony, seemingly free of the world's troubles. There, the sky is clear again, rare ingredients abound. Her enigmatic employer and his visionary daughter have built a lush new life for the global elite, one that reawakens the chef to the pleasures of taste, touch, and her own body. Sounds really good. Okay, so those are all the books that I've heard of. Those are all of the books that are Canadian and all of the books that I've heard of. And I'm just going to talk about the few other books on the list that I've not heard of that I'm pretty sure are American. The first one is Dances by Nicole Cuffey. I wonder if any of these are debut novels. Yes, I think this might be a debut. It says at 22, I've never heard of this book. At 22 years old, Cece Cordell reaches the pinnacle of her career as a ballet dancer when she's promoted to principal at the New York City Ballet. She's instantly catapulted into celebrity, heralded for her inspirational role as the first Black ballerina in the famed company's history. Even as she celebrates the achievement of a lifelong dream, Cece remains haunted by the feeling that she doesn't belong. As she waits for some feeling of rightness that doesn't arrive, she begins to unravel the loose threads of her past. An absent father, a pragmatic mother who dismisses Cece's ambitions, and a missing older brother who stoked her childhood love of ballet but disappeared to deal with his own demons. Interesting. So this is by Nicole Cuffey, who is a Brooklyn-born writer with a BA from Columbia and an MFA from New School. I think this might be her debut, although I'm not sure. The next one is Coleman Hill by Kim Coleman Foot, also American. Her fiction and essays have appeared in a short story collection and some other reviews, so it's possible, yes, this is her first book. So this is a debut as well. Oh, cool. This is great. So in 1916, during the early days of the Great Migration, Celia Coleman and Lucy Grimes flee the racism and poverty of their homes in the post-Civil War South for the promised land of Vauxhall, New Jersey. But the North possesses its own challenges and bigotries that will shape the fates of the women and their families over the next 70 years. Told through the voices of 9 family members, wow, their perspectives at once harmonious and contradictory, Coleman Hill is a penetrating multi-generational debut. Okay, that sounds like it could be fantastic, or it might not be so fantastic. Those 9 perspectives are freaking me out a little bit. That can be done really, really well, or it can be done not so well. I'm sure if it's on this list, it's done well. Next, we have Between Two Moons by Aisha Abdel Gawad. This might be a debut as well. Yeah, I think this might be a debut. It's the holy month of Ramadan, and twin sisters Amira and Lena are about to graduate high school in Bay Bridge, Brooklyn. On the precipice of adulthood, they plan to embark on a summer of teenage revelry, trying on new identities and testing the limits of what they can get away with while still under their parents' roof. But the twins' expectations of a summer of freedom collide with their older brother's return from prison, whose mysterious behavior threatens to undo a delicate family balance. Ooh, this sounds really good. A gorgeously written, intimate family story and a polyphonic portrait of life under the specter of Islamophobia. Oh, this sounds really good, and I think it's a debut, but it doesn't say, so I'm not sure. Wow, this is such a good list. I'm loving this list. Okay, and then we have You Were Watching from the Sand by Juliana Lamay. Juliana Lamay is a Haitian fiction writer, and she has a literature and history degree from Harvard College. This might be a debut as well. She's involved with the Iowa Writers Workshop, or she was a candidate for the Iowa's Writers Workshop. Wow, I think this might be a debut. So it says, yes, this is a debut. So, a stylistically and conceptually daring collection that winds from fantastical horror to mischievous domestic realism. Oh! And always keeps in its sharp, compassionate view the material, spiritual, and emotional lives of Haitian people. Playful, kinetic, and devastating in turn, You Are Watching from the Sand is a collection in which Haitian men, women, and children who find their lives cleaved by the interminably strange bite back at the bizarre with their own oddities. Okay, so I think this is a collection of short stories. Wow, amazing. I love that. I'm definitely interested in those stories or in that collection. Wow, this list is really cool. It's really diverse. I'm loving the diversity in this list. Wow. Okay, I think that I've talked about all of the books. I don't think I missed anything. Wow, wow, wow. I'm so impressed. What a fantastic list. Oh my goodness. So the Women's Prize for Fiction list is pretty fantastic. This list is pretty fantastic. What a great year for women in fiction. Wow, I'm so excited to get my hands on some of these books and read them. I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit easier to get some of these books than some of the books for the Women's Prize. So that makes me happy. Let me know in the comments below if you're planning on reading any of the books mentioned in the long list for the Carol Shields Prize and what you think of the long list. I hope there's going to be some other reaction videos out there. I'm so excited for this new-ish prize. And I'm going to see what I can get my hands on. That's my first step, is to see what I can find. So I definitely know I'm going to go and buy. I have some questions for you, because that and A Council of Dolls, I think I want to start with those two. I really want to read A History of Burning. I have Sisterless Knight on reserve. Wow. And the story about the ballet dancer sounds really good. Oh, I'm going to have a hard time deciding where to begin. Oh, Between Two Moons sounds amazing as well. I'll leave it there for now and we'll chat in the comments, okay? Bye for now. Get those Canadians out up front. I am very happy to be here with you to discuss the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction long list. Hello? Hi. This long list, the Women's Prize for Between Two Moons. Did I say Between Two Moons?